We're at time.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Massachusetts Pirate News. I'm joined today by Steve and Joe. How are you two doing?
Doing all right.
Can't complain.
I'm glad to hear it. So today we have a big lineup, I guess. But first, we want to make sure that you know that our party conference is coming up in about little less than 2 weeks on October 8th. And we'll be discussing our plans going forward into 2023. And I'm amazed I even have to say that. Wow, time really flies. I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways,
it seems like just yesterday the pandemic was starting.
It's a shame it hasn't ended. And we'll have speakers from Agaric, from the U.S. Pirate Party, and also from Voter Choice MA, talking about a wide variety of topics. And we still have a couple other folks we're waiting to hear back on. So we're working on the lineup, and we will have that done this week. If you look in the description, you can find a link to how to register or to find the conference page. We'll be live streaming it. And if we don't do that, but we'll probably do that, then we'll make sure that a copy is uploaded for folks to watch. So on other news, what is the other news?
Well, I just wanted to do a little bit of clarity on question one. And I've heard a lot of feedback on both sides. But my real question that I keep on seeing pop up is with question one, we're like, hey, there's a surplus, but they're just trying to grab more of your money. And I know there's a logical reason why we need this extra money. And so I was hoping you guys could help give me some clarity on that.
So can I read you the text of the question?
Yes.
I think that
what? Wait a minute. Understand what the actual text says? Oh my God! How could you possibly do that, Steve? Don't we have to just go and say lies?
No, it's short. We can read this. Okay, so Article 44 of the Massachusetts Constitution is hereby amended by adding the following paragraph at the end thereof. So I'm not going to go into what this obviously requires some background. You need to go and look at Article 44 to see how it fits in. But, we'll just focus on the change here. So the change is adding the following text: to provide the resources for quality public education and affordable public colleges and universities, and for the repair and maintenance of roads, bridges, and public transportation. All revenue received in accordance with this paragraph shall be expended, subject to appropriation, only for these purposes. So the purposes, again, being public education, public colleges and universities, and the repair and maintenance of roads, bridges, and public transportation. Continuing on. In addition to the taxes on income otherwise authorized in this article, there shall be an additional tax of 4% on that portion of annual taxable income in excess of $1 million, reported on any tax return related to those taxes. So it's an extra 4% on the amount on income over $1 million. The part that's over $1 million, you pay the extra 4% on. So to ensure that this additional tax continues to apply only to the Commonwealth's highest income taxpayers, this $1 million income level shall be adjusted annually to reflect any increases in the cost of living by the same method used for federal income tax brackets. This paragraph shall apply to all taxes beginning on or after January 1st, 2023. That is the question.
So to be clear, is that $1 million cap that is indexed to inflation? Did I get that right? Or
that's what it sounds like. Index to inflation by the same method used for federal income tax brackets.
And you know what's not indexed to inflation?
Alt minimum.
Yeah, well, the minimum wage. Yeah, that's not.
Or the minimum wage. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
So,
we index it so we don't go after people as inflation increases, but we make sure that the people who are making the lowest wages can make even lower wages. Great. Thank you,
So
Steve.
to be really clear on it, it's just on income. So all this talk about, if you have if you have an expensive house or you have that spare car and you have all these assets, it has nothing to do with that. It's only based on income, correct?
Well, yeah. So if you're not, it is not a wealth tax in the sense that like property taxes or wealth taxes. If you have $1 million home, you pay taxes based on that $1 million, that the capital value of this. So this is only on earnings. Conceivably, if you sold your house and that created taxable income, you might have to pay the other. You would, logically have to pay the additional 4% on the amount over $1 million. But that is usually when you sell a capital asset, it is purchase price minus or selling price minus purchase price. So it's
any like if you do any improvements to the property, that gets removed as well.
Yeah. Right. So it is entirely possible for someone to sell a house at a loss and have no tax liability from that.
And also, if you're thinking, oh no, poor Granny is going to go and have to sell her house and she's going to get hit with this, I would have to say if Granny is going and has a $1.5 million house and bought it at 500,000, then yeah, but that's 1 year.
Well, I mean, if properties, one of my little hobbies, weekly rituals, I get the weekly paper. I flip over to the back where they list all the real estate transactions. And, I start going through them and just out of curiosity, what did it sell for? What did it assessed at? What was the previous sale? When was the previous sale and for how much? And I mean, it's sort of funny. You see things that are selling today for homes that are selling well upwards of $1 million that were purchased, back in the 70s for, $40,000 or $50,000, or in the 90s for $200,000 or $300,000. If you're walking away with a bucket full of cash in each hand, please don't complain that your hands are full. That's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's very few of us that shall see $1 million in income in any particular year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only other thing that they've hit a point on is that this particular tax is going to hurt the entrepreneurial class. But as an entrepreneur myself, if you're making millions, and I mean making millions profit, because that's counting, if it's based on income, it's based on what your net is, not what your gross is. So if you're making $1 million, that's $1 million net, meaning that's after all your expenses. So that's a good problem to have. Mm-hmm. So vote yes.
Yeah, I'm in favor of question 1 personally.
But you also raise another point which we didn't discuss, which is since the state has a surplus because of COVID funds and other infrastructure funds from the federal government, why are we raising taxes now? And I just want to address that this is a citizens' initiative. This is a ballot question not put forth by the state government, not put forth by the legislature or the governor. I mean, we know the Democrats are doing their darndest to try and give money back. Probably not as much as the Republicans would like to see, but starve the beast and all that is their motto. But this is a citizens' initiative, and it's going forward. That surplus is not going to exist in the future. Mm-hmm. It's a one-off windfall. And as we face, increasing costs for education, as we face increasing costs for infrastructure. The MBTA needs billions of dollars of work. Other transit authorities need billions of dollars of work. Climate change is a factor and is going to require that we redo bridges and roads and things like that. Having that revenue to deal with those debts that we are accruing are important, and we need the revenue to deal with it.
Yeah, and as someone who has been paying Massachusetts state income tax for it's getting up on 3 decades now, I can't recall any other year. And either of you are welcome to point to call me out as being wrong if you can. I can't remember any year where there was a revenue surplus. This is a pretty novel thing.
Joe, you had something to add.
Yeah, on top of that, if you think about all the infrastructure that's just barely making it like the T, where it's literally falling apart to the point where they have to close down entire lines to repair it. Or our schools that are literally crumbling because they haven't been serviced in forever. And these are all important institutions that hold back or hold together the fabric of our society. So without them,
Well, with schools are a slightly more interesting point in and of themselves. So it interesting enough that I think it's worth dwelling for a minute or two. So y'all are going to indulge me, I hope. But predominantly schools in public schools in Massachusetts, not colleges and universities, but public schools for K through 12 kind of stuff. They're funded through property taxes, which means that in a community where you have more property wealth, you generally have more funding available for schools. Poorer communities, you have less. Which means that there's sort of one of the you end up in a case where you live in a wealthy community, you get a good school. You live in a poorer community, you get less good of a school. To the extent that state dollars are able to even some of this out and provide more opportunity to lower income communities, I think that would be a good thing.
Well, Lowell, as an example, is got one of the bigger budgets for around our area, much bigger than all of our surrounding towns. And every year, it is always short, always falls upon the city council to pay the rest of that bill. That money comes out of the budget for everything else because we have to pay it. And so having more money for our public schools, or for all of our schools in general, is nothing but a good thing.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it will come back to the community. And in terms of although Joe, you mentioned the T, that we're also talking roads, bridges, and maintenance. So that's not an area where we currently do great. The United States in general doesn't necessarily do great on transportation infrastructure, but especially to the extent that it's been originally funded by gasoline taxes, which aren't indexed to inflation and haven't changed in quite a few years.
And one thing I'll just point out, I mean, people, there have been groups that have gone and they've looked at not individual tax return data, but they've looked at, what people have to pay. And if you look at someone in the lowest income bracket, if you look at someone who say the bottom 25% of the income scale, then they're paying, in some cases, up to twice as much as a percentage of their income in taxes. That's state income, state property, and not local property and state sales taxes, which are incredibly regressive. They're paying a far, far more as a percentage of their income than someone who's making $1 million. If you're making $1 million, you're not paying that much in terms of sales taxes. Your income tax is the only thing that goes up, and your property taxes, you may be able to afford a bigger property, but relative to your income, it's just not as burdensome. Mm-hmm. And so adding that 4% surcharge actually gets us back to some degree of equity, mm-hmm. And actually makes state and local taxes more of a flat tax. Right now, combining the three, it's a regressive tax.
Yeah. There's and if you just come in over the line, donate some money to charity, reduce your income, reduce your tax liability. If you made $100,000 too much, give it away. Or actually, well, do the math. It's a math problem, right? You can give so much away, or you can pay so much in taxes, and you have the option of planning and deciding what to do that way. But I don't know about you guys. $1 million years for me, I see them being pretty few and far between.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when we look at like the Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musk's of the world, wow, they're paying so little in terms of just federal income taxes, which they should be paying on. But they have their own things. But we could go on for quite some time. Steve, do you want to talk about the event the Pirate Party was at yesterday?
Yeah, so we participated in a little march that was organized by a group called Extinction Rebellion, sort of a Boston branch of Extinction Rebellion. These are folks who are pushing for or advocating for a rapid reduction in fossil fuel use and the eventual elimination of it, essentially stop releasing greenhouse gases and control global warming. So we marched from Dewey Square to that area downtown by the aquarium where you get on the water where the water shuttle is. Christopher Columbus Park, I think it's called.
I was going to say that shall not be that is named after the genocidal the later discoverer of America.
Yeah, the ill-named park down by the Boston waterfront. let's leave it at that.
Without the statue.
Mm-hmm. So they have, they've had quite a busy week. I think, they've had 7 or 8 days of events. There was one at the State House earlier today. One at the. There was a bike ride. There was. They've been having events all week. I happen to wear my War on Cars t-shirt. If it's the War on Cars is a podcast, and if you are interested in urbanism or transit, it's definitely worth listening to after you listen to our podcast, of course. But this is one of the things that we're going to have to grapple with over the next coming decades is we have an economy and a lifestyle that's basically predicated on really cheap fuel for transportation. And for the last 100 years, that's been gasoline. And, it's a problem. There are people who have the luxury of not driving. I am one of them. I am in a place where I can get around pretty much exclusively by bicycle and occasionally public transit. But there are, many areas where driving is the only option. And, providing alternatives to that is going to require, I think, some rethinking in, how we design and build cities. But it's find this an incredibly fascinating thing to think about. But anyway, we had a good demonstration yesterday, and kudos to the organizers for doing all that work.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what's amazing is usually these events are just one day, and the turnout is quite fantastic. But they actually spread it out over 8 days. This started a week ago yesterday, and they've had events every week in different parts of the Boston area, some of which have had civil disobedience, some of which haven't. And hats off to them for pulling off 8 days worth of protests.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I found, I'll put a link in the description and I'll put it in the chat, of the breakdown by different income brackets of how much people pay in terms of the percentage of their income and taxes. So for those who want to know.
And the last thing we had to talk about was about the housing.
Yeah, so this is one of Massachusetts, Eastern Massachusetts, like a lot of areas in the country, has been underbuilding for years, and we've kind of slow walked ourselves into a case where housing is in, there's not enough of it to go around, and what's available is really, really expensive. And one of the things that some groups have been looking at, and this includes the BPDA and some architectural groups, but you have a shortage of housing, and you also have sort of a rise in remote work, originally created by the pandemic, but that's probably changed permanently to some extent. So the question you can ask is, is it possible to repurpose commercial buildings as housing? And it turns out that at least for what's available in Boston, and not just Boston, it's difficult because office buildings, for reasons that I was actually surprised to see. If you have an apartment building, there's typically like 25 or 30 feet from the exterior wall to the hallway or to the end of the apartment. A lot of the big office buildings have a bigger floor plate than that. So in order to do residential, you'd kind of have like bowling alleys or or at least very different floor plans than what we're conventionally used to. But it's cool to see folks looking at adaptive reuse of existing structures. So to the extent that they're built in, maybe we could just modify them. It turns out, but it's looking like this is not going to, might help a little bit, but not going to be a big one. So, but anyway, the stories from the Boston Globe from this past week, and we will put a link in the description so folks who are interested can check it out themselves.
Yeah, remember to recycle your office. I was just going to say, remember, you can always recycle your office.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I find interesting is there still seems to be an expansion of office property. I mean, I know Somerville, there's a big development that is under construction. There's another one planned in Kendall Square. They're redeveloping another thing in Kendall Square, the Federal Transportation Building. That property area is being expanded in terms, they're building more buildings. I mean, I think this is a good idea to think about it, but I'm just curious, especially with the pandemic, are we have more office space?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things behind it. First is not all office space is created equal. Some offices are rather nice and some are not so nice. And I think you can, the, the, I think there's the market for the not so nice ones is dwindling. Also, there are jobs that you could do in a lab building that you can't necessarily do at home. I'm thinking, if you're running experiments in a lab, you don't necessarily have that. People who do primarily computer work, software development, and similar sort of things where you don't need any special equipment other than a computer. Working at home works really well, but if you're in a profession that needs specialized equipment, then you kind of got to go on premises.
Yeah, good point.
And Eastern Massachusetts and Kendall Square in particularly is arguably one of the biotech capitals of the world. So more labs.
Yeah, certainly could be that as you noted, the quote unquote good office space is being expanded and people are just moving. So. And with that, thank you very much for watching this week's episode of Pirate News. We have this roughly every week, but almost always, every Sunday at 7:30. If you're interested in helping us to make these or to expand them, if you have suggestions for renaming it, what was the one? The Pirate Broadside? No.
Joe? Oh, a broadside would be good. Cannon Blast.
Cannon Blast. That's another one. So if you want to help with these, as always, you can send us an email at info@masspirates.org. Do check out our conference. It's free. It's online. It's COVID safe, and it's flu and cold safe as well. So there you go. Check us out at masspirates.org. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And may it not be too cold for you.
And also run for office.
That's what we'll be discussing. Woo!